Hello, reading friend. Thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today, let's spend a few minutes with Foundation and Empire by Isaac Asimov. This is the second in the Foundation series. It was originally published back in 1952, and I decided to reread this. I read it originally about maybe around 10 years ago, but I recently reread Foundation, the first book of the series, and so I decided to go ahead and give this second book a reread as well, and I probably will reread the third book in the series called Second Foundation, and then after that I may finish out this series. I've only read these three in this first three in this series so far, but I'm gonna reread maybe the third one and then go on and complete the series. I think will happen over the course maybe of next year. Anyway, Foundation and Empire, originally published in 1952, like I said. So this book is sort of similar to the Foundation book, which I chatted, and we'll link to that chat down in the details below. I will be careful also to not give away any kind of spoilers that I think would detract from a first-time reader of either Foundation or this second book, Foundation and Empire. Having said that, this book takes place several hundred years after the action in the first book. But this book is sort of structured similarly to the first book in that it is collected from other works that Asimov published previously. So this book really contains two parts. The first part is about the general, quote unquote, and the second part is about the mule. So this first part of the book really concerns this general whose name is Belrios, and the emperor at the time is Cleon II, and the empire has actually continued to shrink, as predicted in the original book, the psychohistory of Harry Seldon, on which this whole series is kind of based. And I won't go into that because I talked about it in the previous video, but the empire has continued to have, issues and to be on this trajectory of decline. Well, this general, really able general, sort of arises and has some success in reestablishing power for the empire in some areas where it had been lost or weakened. But he runs up against some court drama here with the emperor, Cleon, having suspicions. I think this is often the case when it comes to an emperor or an empire where the emperor would need to constantly sort of be on guard for strong generals or other strong figures to challenge his power. So this is sort of what's set up in the first book, first half of this book around the general. The main characters here, other than the general Belrios and the Emperor Cleon II, is a trader called Lathan Devers, and he is a Foundation trader. The Foundation at this point has, become very successful, or continued to be more successful, and has a far-flung sort of trading network. And so Lathan Devers is a Foundation trader. And then we have Dusimbar, who is an aristocrat from one of the Empire's planets where this general reestablished dominance, called Sowena. And this aristocrat has some knowledge of, the ancient times. So knowledge of the knowledge that is already sort of starting to pass away as the empire is decreasing and crumbling. Sort of knowledge in general, sort of like what happened in the Roman Empire. Knowledge is on the decline as well in the empire, but this character really values the ancient knowledge. So then the second half of the book is really around this character of the Mule. This takes place about 100 years, I think, from the action in the first half of the book. So the Mule At this point, the Empire has actually been, the capital planet of the Empire, Trantor, has actually been sacked by barbarians. The Empire has really dwindled to around, I think, 20 or something planets from the hundreds or millions that once existed. So the Empire has really dramatically declined. The Foundation, on the other hand's power and influence has continued to expand, but it's kind of come at a cost. The Empire has it. I mean, the Foundation has its own sort of struggles internally, as far as it is now an authoritarian type government. So it has this notion of sort of an inevitability that it's going to succeed, that it sort of feels that history, the future, is on its side, and there's an inevitability in its success. So it doesn't really have to try, right, or reform or evolve in any way. And so this becomes really, really an issue that's explored here in this second half of the book. But the Mule is an outside force that is challenging the Empire and also the Foundation. So the Mule is a sort of a renegade, rogue sort of power that has sprung up seemingly out of nowhere, and it's very mysterious about his power and how he's getting his power and how he's managing to expand his power the way he has. It's very mysterious. So that's something that we discover through the course of the second half of the book. The main characters in the second half of the book, we have a married couple, Taryn and Batya Daryl. Taryn is from one of the mining worlds, I think, under the influence of the Foundation. Batya is actually from the Foundation, but they are critical of it. And also they see the danger of the Mule, and so they sort of seek to really... there's these mining worlds and these trading worlds that are sort of on the periphery of the Foundation that sort of have this loose alliance that are trying to, like, not only stay out of the path, I guess, of the Mule, but also reform the Foundation itself. So they team up with another character who's called Ebling Miss, and he is a psychologist. He studies the psychohistory of Harry Seldon. Now, if you remember from the first book, or you might not, it's established that in the Foundation there is not... there's no psychologists that know psychohistory. So that was done on purpose by the founder of the Foundation, Harry Seldon, where this knowledge is not known to people because he felt that it would be dangerous for Foundation to actually have the knowledge, because this sort of pre-knowledge of patterns of the future could impact their decision making. So, but Ebling Miss studies psychohistory, and so he's setting out to... He thinks the answer to the problem of the Mule, as well as to the problems in the Foundation itself, lie in psychohistory, and so he sets out to sort of rediscover that knowledge. And then there's this mysterious character who's a clown, who's known as Magnifico, that's rescued by Batya and Torin on one of the worlds, and he is the clown, sort of a jester to the Mule. He lives in sort of fear of the Mule, and they take him in. He's a very mysterious figure here in this second part of the book that we learn a lot more about as we journey through this second half. So that's sort of the gist of what the story's about, I think, what both of the stories are about, but some sort of key takeaways and impressions that I had. One was arrogance leads to stagnation. So, the Foundation has this idea of itself as an inevitability, that its success is inevitable for history, that it really can't make any wrong decisions. And, that's what happens sometimes when there is a a myth develops around a culture or around people, even individuals, where you just think you're right. You can't do no wrong, so you don't need to worry about making any mistakes. The Foundation are very deliberate. As far as history goes, they take a lot of time. They understand the grand sweep of history, and that individuals don't impact history so much as the aggregate, as societies in general, like the aggregate does. There's a quote here that I think is pretty cool that's talking about the Foundation and its philosophy, and it says, "Why, they are so sure of themselves that they do not even hurry. They move slowly, phlegmatically. They speak of necessary centuries. They swallow worlds at leisure, creep through systems with dawdling complacence." So this is actually the strength of the Foundation initially, right? But if you have this sort of arrogance of just we're on the right path and we can do no wrong, and you don't evaluate that, then things can go awry for you, which is what ends up happening to the Foundation here in this, especially during the second half of this book. And then another key thought impression is that unforeseen variables like the mule can always come out of nowhere, right? So no matter how you think that you've got a plan, or that you're on the right trajectory, or that you are the culmination of the forces of history at its peak, there's a variable that can come in and change all that. That's not foreseen, that has not been foreseen. And I think that happens just in life in general, and it happens to societies and governments as well, which is illustrated here in this book. Finally, there's a cool piece of technology in this book that's called the Busy Sonar. This is an instrument that can affect, it sort of creates a picture, and it can have like deadly consequences actually in this book. This clown, Magnifico, is a virtuoso on the Busy Sonar. But if you're a fan of Futurama, you might recognize this instrument as the hollow phoner. It's in the cartoon the Futurama, so Futurama fans may sort of recognize this, but it's definitely a little bit different in the book than it is in Futurama, as insofar as it can be a deadly weapon in Foundation. So all right, I think I will leave the chat there. I did enjoy this. This is a quick and easy read, but yet kind of a fun story and a fun world, a universe to sort of get wrapped up in. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the chat, I will be going ahead and reading the third in the series that's called Second Foundation, coming up here pretty soon, and then I think I'll probably continue out this series off and on throughout next year and finish out this series that I have only read these first 3 books initially in the past. So I will end the chat with that. My next chat is going to be The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann. I should have a chat on this coming up fairly soon. I'm almost finished. So until next time, take care. Bye.